Evening, guys. Welcome to Football Brownie. Hope you're all well. Looking after yourself, keeping each other safe, spreading the love during this pandemic. Before we go any further, can you please like, share, and most importantly, subscribe? We need this channel to grow, and we can't grow without your help. Now, this evening, we have a special guest, a live reporter from GTFM, who covers Cardiff City, writer of Forza Italian Football, and founder and editor-in-chief of Total German Football. It's none other than the man himself, Dan Blakemore. Evening, Dan. How are you, man?
Evening, not bad. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thank you very much for coming on. Dan, tell us about yourself. You know, how did you get into the mad world of the media world, and particularly the football media world?
I started off writing about rugby league. I used to play rugby league, and when I stopped playing, I took over doing a social media account for a team. Started doing match reports, and I met a man called Ian Golden, who's one of the hosts of the season tickets on GTFM. And he was the one who said, "I've got a season ticket down at the City. Would you like to cover a couple of games? You're good at what you do." So yeah, I was well up for seeing a different side of it. And it just sort of rolled on from there, really.
Okay, all right, no worries. Well, Cardiff City. We'll go on to Cardiff City later on, because I know that's probably why a lot of the guys are logging right now. Hi to everybody in the chat. I won't go to a chat room until later on. I hope you guys understand that. But Dan, what attracted you to both Italian and German football in particular?
Italian football is from a very long time ago. My first real memory of football is watching Italian 90 and Gaza in particular. When Gaza went to play for Lazio, it was kind of a natural progression. It was the only thing at the time as well, unless you had Sky money and could afford to watch the Premier League. Italian football was on Channel 4 every weekend. So every Sunday we sit with my grandparents, there'd be Italian football on, you'd watch Gaza. And I think the first game I ever watched was a Derby della Capitale, Lazio and Rome. And the atmosphere was phenomenal. And it just kind of spitballed from there, just continued to follow it. German football kind of started when we came into this pandemic. We were locked in a house. It was the only league that was on the TV. So I started following it week in, week out. Enjoyed it as much as I enjoy watching Serie A. And it's kind of just spitballed from there. I went off, did my own thing, and I've just continued to follow it and work it.
Okay. Well, I remember going first of all with Italian football. I remember it as far back as when it was on Channel 4. What was it? Gazzetta Italia Football, or something like that it was called.
I can't remember his name. The guy that does it. He's on BT Sport now. Every weekend.
Corretta della Sport or something you'd be reading in the cafe.
That's him, yeah.
So, that was basically my first memories of Italian football. And Serie A was at the top of a tree regarding leagues back then. That's where, Ian Rush tried it. I wouldn't say flop, but it was different to what he was used to when he was at Liverpool. And many people, many players didn't really have a good experience there. Dennis Bergkamp being one of them. When he was at Inter.
It's a very different style of football, I think. Which is why you see Christian Eriksen now struggling at Inter. It's positive, but I think it's defensively minded first, which is maybe a slight cliche of Italian football. But it's very much make sure the back end is okay before you do anything else. So I think a lot of attacking players maybe don't excel quite as much when they go to Italy if they're not used to that type of football, especially coming from the Premier League where it's a little bit more probably attack minded.
Yeah. Same here. I don't know if you know, I live in Spain. And the same year with La Liga. It is it's more technical, but it's always the mentality is always built from the back. And I suppose the younger audience now, because the rules have changed, since my day. The rules have changed. Is in, you can't clatter someone 2-footed on the back of the calf until you can't do it now. You're likely to be straight off. But because the rules changed, I think the audience have changed, and the audience's mentality have changed. As in, they've gone off technical stuff. It's just, as long as it's like a game of basketball, that seems to be more attractive. I don't know if you would agree with that,
It's entertainment value, isn't it? I think we live in a world now where everything is based on entertainment value, whether it be writing in the media, everything's clickbait, trying to get your attention. Nobody wants to do the hard yards. And I think it's the same when you watch any sport. I mean, rugby's on a downturn now because it's boring, crash bang, there's not a lot to watch. And I think football's got that sort of element to it as well, especially in places like Italy, Spain, where like I watch La Liga sometimes and it seems to go sideways, backwards, and nobody seems to make any progress. And I think unless you appreciate the tactical side of it, then it's probably not going to be for you in entertainment value.
No, I do agree on that. So, just keeping on Italian football more, have you been to any Italian games or yourself?
This year, I'm covering Milan this year. I did have plans to go to Italy at some point, which have well and truly been scuppered. I got out to Rome last year. I didn't cover a game because Lazio and Roma were both away at the time. So most of it is covered from here at the moment. I'm covering pretty much Milan all season, as and when I can with the city and things as well. But yeah, I mean, long term, I would like to do a lot more over there if I can.
Yeah. Years ago, I went to the Milan derby. Me and one of my good mates back home, we went to a Milan derby, and I'm talking years ago because it was, 2001 time, where it was still a good standard, but it was slightly dropping from the 90s. And I couldn't go for various reasons, but Wales lost 4-0 under Bobby Gould in a qualifier there in Milan as well. I wish I could have gone, but I didn't. But one thing I'm so grateful that I went to a Milan derby is that I see the San Siro in its pop. I know it's crumbling down now, unfortunately. And is it this year they move in, or at the end of the season?
I think originally it was due to be completed for the start of the 21-22 season. But obviously with everything that's going on at the moment, that may be slightly delayed. But it's only a stone's throw from where the San Siro is, which I think everybody else that watches football, certainly for me, the San Siro is like one of the best stadiums in the world. And I think in Italy, I think it's generally hated as just an eyesore that's falling to pieces and is a horrible place to go and watch football. But I think for everybody else, it's sort of like a cathedral of the game, really.
Yeah, no, definitely. Because it was basically revamped for Italian 90, if I remember correctly. But things have to move on, unfortunately, and good luck to it, because they don't really have clubs that really own the grounds in Italy. It's very much like Spain, where the local councils own it, the clubs would rent it. Peppercorn rent, because it brings in the tourists, so that's where the local council make their money, I suppose.
Yeah, it's one thing I've learned from Italy is everything is sort of, nothing is as it seems. There's a reason municipals own stadiums, and like you said, a lot of those stadiums were done up for Italian 90. they're still in the same state where Napoli play is absolutely hanging, and it was a way of funneling money through for people to take money out and make their own
I
games
know.
elsewhere, which is quite a feature. I suppose that's another part of Italian football which makes it enjoyable. I think any club at any point is on the verge of imploding, no matter how successful they are. You never know what's going to happen. You know,
I
Juventus.
know. To be honest, I live in the Marbella area, right? And when you're on about money and so on, the local club here, uh, the allegations that the former owners were using that. Rugby as well, the local rugby club. There were again allegations that the owners were, I know exactly what you mean. And,
That's,
you know, I,
I think you got. I think it's
I,
Fiorentina now. Are trying. They've got a new American owner with plenty of money who is absolutely desperate to redo the stadium. And there's a vote that's gone through. I don't know how many times and been denied on the basis that it's a historical city and changing the stadium will somehow impact on that. And I think it's more a case of he wants to own the new stadium. And the city are not prepared to allow him to do that. So it's going to stay a crumbling wreck for the foreseeable future until they decide they maybe want to invest a little bit in it themselves.
And let's go on to the Bundesliga. Well, not so much a Bundesliga, lower level German football if you want, but yeah, German football. Now, in all fairness to the German government at the time, they were the ones who were leading the kind of bring football back for the mentality of football fans. So they pushed the board in getting football back. To me, it isn't as standard as what others led you to believe. I'm not too sure about what you think about that, Dan.
I think it's. I see the phrase "farmers league" used a lot when describing anything outside of England, I suppose. But I mean,
Oh, yeah, you've been looking at my Twitter too much, Dan. You've been looking at Twitter too much.
I think unless it's something you follow and you watch, I think it's quite easy to make an assumption based on the fact that Bayern Munich have won it for like 8, 9, 10 years in a row or whatever it is at this point. But I think I always use like the Champions League as the barometer of sort of clubs in Europe, as it's the best against the best, or at least it should be. And you go back to look at like the semi-finals last year. There's 2 German clubs, there's a French club. There's no Premier League clubs in there. And yes, they've had their success. Liverpool, Man United, Chelsea. They've all won it at one point or another. But when you actually go through and you look at all the statistics of teams that have won it, I think Spanish clubs are way and above everybody else. And then England, Germany, are kind of on a par with each other. I mean, I think at the lower end of the Bundesliga, they are probably not at the standard as the Premier League would be. But the top half certainly could more than compete with. I'm not saying they'd be successful. Bayern Munich would be successful in the Premier League. Of course they would. I think Leipzig, again, another great team, probably be successful playing in the Premier League. There's a difference I think the Premier League is tougher. It's a lot of games in a short space of time. They don't take the breaks they take in Germany. The cup competitions, there's 2 here, there's only 1 in Germany. So, and the cup competitions are smaller as well. So maybe attritionally, it's not quite as tough to win as the Premier League is. But I think standard-wise, at the top end, those teams are more than, well, Bayern Munich are the champions of Europe, so I think they're more than on par with anything in the Premier League, but certainly towards the bottom end, it's probably not as good.
Well, I've been trying to study more into German football of late. I'm trying to do my homework because someone sent me a video or linked to a video on YouTube going back a week or so ago regarding how the old East German clubs were basically raped of their better players once the war came down. And I don't know how old you are, but I can vaguely remember the likes of Cardiff playing Newport in the early 80s. I think that was a quarter final, of a Cup Winners' Cup. I can remember the likes of Locomotive Leipzig losing to Ajax in 87 in the Cup Winners' Cup. And the likes of Dynamo Berlin and those kind of clubs. And you look at them now after the wall have come down, and I think they may be in like the fourth tier of German football. So, and it's only, I think this year, I think this year's the only time two clubs from the old East Germany are in the Bundesliga. But I wouldn't classify RB Leipzig as an old East German team because they were only basically created the last 15 years or so.
Yeah.
But I don't know, do you think that type of, if you wanted to do some kind of collaboration regarding the film, I don't know if that would interest you.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, I think Union Berlin are probably the only genuine East German team left in the Bundesliga. After that, I think Dynamo Dresden are now in the 3 Liga. So, well, our version of League One, I guess. But I think the clubs from East Germany dominated at that point because obviously communism was driven towards sport. The old Red Army teams from Russia and things, then it was the same in Germany. But since that wall came down, you're right. I think most of the clubs are primarily right to the west, around the Rhineland, where the industry is, where the money is. Places like Hamburg, port cities, it's strange in the fact that I suppose in the Premier League we look at London is where most of the big clubs come from, capital city, lots of money. In Germany, Hertha Berlin are currently down the bottom, not doing very well. They don't have a great following. Football is a massively sort of West German dominated game, and I think once the wall came down, all of the main players who were probably playing in East Germany because of the fact they had no option to leave, moved out and went to clubs with money. And that's the way it's always stayed. I suppose it's the same in any league, and those with money are those that keep the best players.
I was looking back at it. I mean, Hansa Rostock, they were a few years in Bundesliga, and then Dynamo Dresden as well, but they went bust and they down into four. But it's something anyway.
Yeah,
now, I'm looking at the chat. Anybody wants to McCarthy. Right, Cardiff City. Let's get on with it. Right. Well, what's your past with Cardiff City, Dan? Before we go on to the...
I'm Cardiff boy, born and bred. I think I started going to games on Boxing Day only when I was a kid. We'd go with the family on a Boxing Day to watch a game. As I got older and I enjoyed football more, I started taking myself. Used to go to the old Ninian Park. Never went so much when they first moved over. And then my son was born, who's absolutely football mental. So we got season tickets and I've been taking him ever since. So yeah, it's my club, it's my city. So it's, the team that is most important to me, I suppose.
Whereabouts in Cardiff are you?
I'm from Llanrumney originally, and now living up in Pentwyn.
You don't have to say. now. Just, you don't have to say that.
I've moved out. My boy still plays football for Lamrimney. I still coach football at Lamrimney as well, so I'm still a Lamrimney boy at heart.
No, I grew up in Merthyr, so I used to go on a train back and forth down Cardiff, and then I lived in Penarth for the last 16 years, I think, of my time in the UK. So it's quite easy to get to, man. Right, what's your take on the last 7 or 8 days? I go back to 7 or 8 days because that's when the first of the two new signings come in. We then got dumped out of the FA Cup. Fast forward another couple of days, second signing come in. We then lost to QPR. Harris gets a sack, and McCarthy gets appointed. Basically, within 7 or 8 days. So, I think first of all, I think we should start on Harris. What's your opinion with Harris? How it ended and how it?
I mean, I think he was there longer than he probably should have been. For a start, I mean, I got to do a couple of press conferences with him during his tenure. I can't honestly say I was a fan. I think I always look at things long term when it comes to anything in life, and Cardiff City is no different. And Harris was the same sort of ilk as a Warnock, a Trollope, any of the managers we've had, really. They come in, they steady the ship, if you like. They have some short-term success, and then you basically get regression. They get sacked, they move on, they do the same thing at another club. So I thought he was the wrong appointment all along, and I said it and stood by it, even when he was sort of getting us to the playoffs, which I think was probably more by luck than judgment, because if you go back and you look at the Leeds game, you play that 100 times, we're probably only going to win it once. They just had a day where they couldn't get the ball in the net. They were by far the better team. You know, we went past Bristol City when they were on a downturn, Preston when they were on a downturn, and mixed in with that were results with drawing with Wigan, you know, losing to Charlton. There were signs from the off, and I think you can get carried away with, yeah, but we're going in the right direction without looking at the whole picture. And I think I could see where it was headed long term. And don't get me wrong, I don't like to be negative. It gives me no pleasure that, you know, I don't want to put my hand up and go, yeah, I was right. That's what I said at the beginning. But I think it's where it's headed. And I think the same now with bringing Mick McCarthy in. Short term, if this is just for 6 months, fantastic. Because he will come in, he will steady the ship, and he will do. He's a knowledgeable football man that's been there and done it. So for 6 months, great. But if this is what I suspect, and in 6 months' time, if he's done a good job, they're going to give him a 2 or 3 year contract, then I think we're just basically going around in a circle. We're going to end up in the same position in 12, 18 months' time as we're in now.
Okay, fair enough. And no, we all knew where we were before the first signing come in and then the second signing come in. So do you think those two signings were actually Harris's signings or not?
I don't think they were, no. I think they were board signings. I think he made it quite plainly clear that he didn't bring Waters in the press conference that he did in a roundabout way. I think he was trying to let everybody know that was nothing to do with him. I know he's been chasing Perry NG for however many transfer windows, and whether that was just something that he brought up and they then pushed through, knowing he was probably not going to be there anyway. But I don't think... I think they knew they were going to get rid of him eventually. They must have. There's no way they were sat in a boardroom going, well, he may stay till the end of the season. They must have known. So I don't see any way they've let him go out and make those signings. I think they've gone over his head.
But the thing that stuck out to me was that the desperation in our QPR team selection really was in your face. Because, as you mentioned, if they weren't his signings, the bloody hell, those two new signings went straight to starting 11.
Yeah, which I think was probably, in Perry NG's case, was a necessity. because we have
I agree on that.
no
I
right
agree on
back.
that
So
one.
I mean, I don't think he had a choice there. The Waters one was strange because I mean, he played him for 55, 60 minutes, brought him off with
And
no
it's
real.
strange kind of tactic to take him off as well.
Because in fairness to him, he was making runs. He looked frustrated, which I think he might as well get
Yeah.
used to because the balls, unless things change, that's how it's going to be for him. Um, but he was making runs. He looked positive, and he dragged him off after 60 minutes. But again, I think my whole overriding notion of Harris was he was tactically naive at the best of times. I don't think he ever had a plan other than plan A. And if it went wrong, there was no. In the playoff semi-final last year, I mean, we were the better team for the first half of the first leg. And at half time, Scott Parker pushed his back line up the field 15 yards, told them to press a bit harder, and we went to pot. And there was he just stood on the sideline looking round with no plan B, nothing else to do. We'd been
No,
fouled
no.
out. That's it.
I subscribe to the Millwall fan channel. Basically, before I set this up properly, I don't. It's still not set up properly, but until I started going on it quite regularly, I was trying to do a bit of homework with other fan channels, not just anti-fan channels, but other West Ham fan TV and all the different clubs to get a better idea of how this. I'm 42. I'm useless with bloody technology. So one of the YouTube channels I did subscribe to and still have is the Millwall one, and I went back into the previous kind of fan channels previous videos when Harris was still in charge. And basically, for a number of weeks before, it was so similar to what the fans were seeing towards the end of his time at Cardiff. It's basically, he's got no plan B. Okay, little bit of variance, but it's basically a 4-4-2 all the time. I know you can kind of like change it slightly, but the basics of a 4-4-2 were always there. He was never changing people who become out of form and defend. Bakuna, in my opinion, is stealing a living as a professional footballer. But that's only my opinion. But he, for Harris with Millwall, it seemed as if he walked before he had the bullet. And the Cardiff job was too big a job for him in the first place. I don't know what your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think when Warnock left, I think there's sort of a preconception that comes with Warnock that he's a big name manager, which I guess he is. He's the top of the managers that I described earlier, that steadies the ship, has some success, and eventually regresses and leaves, the same as he did at Cardiff, Sheffield, everywhere he's been. He's great at getting success. He's not great at making it last. He's a stopgap to, anything permanent. And I think I'm sure I read at the time that Warnock was the one that kind of pushed the board in the direction of Neil Harris. Whether I'm remembering that correctly or not, I'm not sure, so don't quote me on it. But I mean, I think he was never. First of all, I had no idea who he was, other than he came to Cardiff City once many moons ago and was there for 10 minutes before leaving. And I think the more I looked into him, and you start looking at his managerial career, you again just realise you're going down the same path as you always have. And like I said, I was in press conference with him. He didn't. I think the best way he came across as a bit of a smart ass that had an answer for everything without actually really answering your question. I mean, I challenged him after they drew with Wigan. I think we'd beaten Luton away. We'd had a great game at Huddersfield and won 3-0. And then we'd come at home and had a horrendous draw against Wigan. We scored 2 goals from long throws and just lumping it into the box. And I asked him if there was a concern with the lack of creating play, open play, and scoring goals. And he kind of tried to shoot me down straight away with, well, you obviously didn't watch our last game. And I was like, well, I did watch last game, which is why he used the term consistent. One game's not consistent, and he kind of backtracked then and was like, straight away from the off, it just gave me the impression of somebody that didn't want to be challenged and just wanted to be asked the simple platitudes and get on with his day. And it rubbed me up the wrong way straight away as somebody that's got to talk to somebody else for a living. But then when you listen to his press conferences going forward, you start to hear, he kind of asks himself a question and answers it in the press conference without actually really answering the question he was asked in the first place. And it just came across a bit as he was always slipping and sliding and just trying to keep himself in a job.
Now, unfortunately, and I think Cardiff City would be very grateful. I don't have the kind of persuasive golden handshakes to get me into these press conferences. But even me as a viewer of Cardiff City TV, towards the end, he was coming across like a salesman. No. You're walking into a car showroom, and one of the worst things I hate in the UK, you walk into a car showroom, all of a sudden you've got this salesperson come on to, giving all the gift of a gab, where, because I've been in sales for over 20 years, in my younger days, I would stand in the mirror, and, I'd like pitch to myself in the mirror, and I'd have the ex-wife looking at me, oh, you could do that better, you could do this better, change that word to this word, and it seems as if he was doing those kind of things the day before a game, so that he knew what to say in front of you guys, and as you said, if a question then come at him to divert away from what he's got in his mind for saying, he refused to answer it.
I think you can get quite comfortable. I mean, when you go into a press conference, you generally have your big media outlets, your BBCs, your Wales Online, people that are there. So there's a certain need, I suppose, if you're doing it every day and you have to speak to him on a kind of almost daily basis, where you have to have some sort of relationship where you're not rubbing him up the wrong way. But I think when you sit in a press conference, you find a lot of the questions they're generic, they're the same, they're just kind of, little thrown out. What do you think? How did it go today? But whereas I think I try and border the line of being somebody that's either sat in a Grange end or the press box, sometimes very unsuccessfully. But you want answers to things. And I think when I posed him the question about not scoring from open play, it was more of a frustration of everybody sitting together in a Grange end, seeing exactly what's going on. And it's like, I want you to answer what's really happening. I don't want you to tell me, so-and-so had a good game, or, Joe Bennett wasn't at his best today, but he trained really well all week, which was like a favourite catchphrase of his for his entire team there. At one point, I considered giving my season ticket back and seeing if I could just go watch training every day, because they seem to be fantastic at training week in, week out, but useless on a Saturday. But it's hard, because I think they get into a rhythm of sitting in a room with people asking them the same things all the time, and they kind of get used to just people accepting the quick one-word answer. And I mean, but then I see when you were in with Neil Warnock, you never had to question him, because he was always honest straight away. He would come in without you even asking and just say, well, that was crap today, and start reeling off a list of everything that had gone wrong, and there was no need to press him. But Harris just always came across as he didn't want to be pressed. He didn't want to answer questions. He just wanted you to take what he was saying, swallow it, and get on with it. And for a lot of, well, especially towards the end, some of the nonsense, like after the Norwich game, I thought we were fantastic. It was just that was just mind blowing to listen to.
It could be worse. It could be with Dave Jones, and he banned all the press. So it could be worse.
Yeah, well, sometimes you wish they would, when you've got to listen to some of the nonsense that comes out occasionally. But it just got to a point where it was like, I'm not even sure that he could believe what he was saying. I mean, towards the beginning of the bad run, I suppose you can take it that, all right, maybe they are training well and things just haven't quite gone their way and it'll pick up. But the longer it goes on and the more he keeps telling you he thought they were fantastic, and you're sitting there thinking, you can't believe this. You can't expect us to believe it. And you certainly can't expect people who are paying for season tickets to believe what you're saying, because it's clear for everybody it's not working, and your time's done.
Yeah.
And I think he was just holding out as long as he could.
Now, we're going to Mick McCarthy. Before we go on the subject, I just want to point out that we first, I've been going down the city for a long time, and you yourself, as you explained earlier on, but we first got to know each other through a few days ago because Graham Kavanagh knocked my video for 6 over the stands and into the car park. So what's your opinion on Mick McCarthy?
Like I said earlier, I think he's obviously a knowledgeable football manager. He's been around for a long time. He's had success. He's been to the Premier League. He's coached internationally. Now, I still see him in that same group as he's just a stopgap. He comes in, he'll have short-term success, and ultimately he gets sacked. He's been around a while. He did a good job at Ipswich with no money. But then his last job was in Greece, where he's, I think, lost 5 out of 8 and been sacked in the space of 2-3 months. I mean, like, short term, 100%, I think he's going to come in and I think he will make a difference. But I mean, we need to look beyond that and what's the plan for the club? Like, where is this it now? Is it just occasionally you up to the Premiership, come down, take the parachute payment, bounce about the Championship, one good year, one bad year? Or are we looking to kind of get up, stay up and sustain it? Like, we're a club in the capital city of Wales. We're the only club in the city. We can do a lot better than being 15th in the Championship, or I haven't even looked at the table recently, just in case it's got worse. But I think long term, and I fully expect, like I said, if he does well over the next 6 months, there will be a meeting where a contract is put in front of him for 2 or 3 years. And that's where I have my issue with it. Not short term, fully on board, getting behind him now for the 6 months. But I have a real concern that 6 months is going to snowball into 18 months, 2 years, and we're going to be back in the same position again.
I mean, right. It seems as if most of the clubs in which he has left, even the ones in which he done well at, they dropped quite considerably, after he's left. So I'm definitely on board in the point you're trying to make, the point you're making is that, there's no longevity regarding an appointment of Mick McCarthy. I mean, even as far back as his first ever appointment, which was Mill, he got Mill to what is now a Championship playoffs. He left and took the Ireland job, and Millwall dropped down to what is now the League One, and they struggled with years before coming back to this level. Then the Ireland job, and we all know, I did their homework on this, and there were problems on both sides between him and Roy Keane. But surely, in my opinion, for the sake of the Irish football team and Ireland as a whole, because families were arguing between one another over there as to which side they were on. But surely management should come into it and say, look, okay, we may not like each other, we may not get on, but for the sake of Ireland and the sake of this team, and the sake of the World Cup, let's just bite our lip and get through this next few weeks. Right? Then he went to Sunderland, and now look where he left, and Sunderland have dropped. Ipswich, you could say exactly the same. He took them to the playoffs one year, and then I think it was like 15th next. Left where they are. It's kind of like, and this could sound really nasty. I don't mean it like that, but it's like your career has been kind of like selfish. Is that he only thinks there and then because he doesn't think of a club after he leaves. He just thinks of the club at the time he is in charge of. For a man that's not the type of managerial mentality you want. You want the youngsters coming through. You want a better youth setup. You want a better reserve setup. But to me, you bang on regarding the 6 months. The club seems to be winning fans over. The thing is, all right, we only get in 6 months and we'll see where we are. In my opinion, there's more options which are out of work right now. Nigel Pearson, Tony Pulis, Bellamy. There's more options out of work now than it ever be in the summer.
Yeah.
And my number one would have been Billage. But he's dropped down to the championship before with West Brom. So I'm sure he could be convinced. The moment he was sacked from West Brom, City should have moved in there then. By the time they got rid of Harris, he was on playing China.
Seems to be. It's like it's a feature of everything that seems to be going on at the moment. I think it comes from a lack of having what you would call maybe a football man at the top of the club, a director of football, which is something. If Mick McCarthy's only staying for 6 months as manager, then take him upstairs. Give him because at the moment we've basically got businessmen with lots of money making football decisions with no real experience. Now, I mean, you wouldn't take me into a bank tomorrow with no banking experience and allow me to start investing people's money. So I'm not sure why we do it with a football club. It's something you need to learn, it's something you need to have done, you need to understand. You can't just come in and go, well, I got loads of money, so I'm just going to make the decisions. That invariably ends badly and has ended badly at any club it's ever happened at. And then you look at a model like Manchester City, which is
on a larger scale. You could just, Arsenal has been a prime example in the last few years of non-football people think they can run a football club.
Yeah, their clubs run for profit, not for football. I mean, Man United have been in a similar situation for a very long time. I wrote an article 2 or 3 years ago. When you look at, you've got someone like Ed Woodward, who is an accountant by trade, who is making football decisions. And that's when you then realise that the most important thing to the club is the balance sheet and not what's happening on the field. As long as you're still making money, winning trophies and things like that have become irrelevant. And I mean, it's hard to tell with Tan and Darman and everything that's going on at the moment, whether, he seems to want to go up and he seems to want to have success, but then by kind of taking his foot off the gas and not being decisive and leaving Harris in charge and then making a short-term appointment, you start to wonder whether it really is success he wants, or if he is quite happy just bouncing about doing what we're doing at the moment, as long as he's taking money out of the club, which I mean at the moment he can't be. I think last thing I read they were losing like 3 million over the course of a month during the pandemic. So I mean, surely success would be a good thing. I mean, even if you go up and you come down, you get parachute payments. Surely the only way is to go up and to get better. But I suppose with the current situation, there's nothing anyone's ever been through before. So I suppose you have to throw that into the mix of what you can do monetary-wise, what's feasible and what's not. But I mean, I don't see any way of getting out of the slump other than trying to push forward in the best way you can. But at the moment, it seems like we've just kind of stagnated and gone, well, this will just have to do. Which, I mean, for somebody who buys a season ticket, that's not great.
I think it'd be very beneficial for fans if Vincent Tan actually not a statement, because anyone can write a statement on behalf of Vincent Tan, but Vincent Tan actually comes out himself and said, right, this is my kind of 5-year plan or 3-year plan. Because whilst I the guy ever since the rebrand, he's kind of like on one side of the scale to the other, as in he was, when we were in the Premier League under Mackay, he was so loving the public eye. And now he's gone from that kind of scale. He's never seen it in the ground anymore. So I don't know. He needs to come out and tell fans where the club is going, because I'm sure that if one of his restaurants, if one of his hotels or retail businesses was losing the type of money in which Cardiff City will be losing after the policy payment, then he would have got rid of a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's like any business, isn't it? I mean, if you're running a business properly, you have a goal for 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. You've got a plan of where you want that business to go. And this is where I kind of hit the stumbling block with it, is at the moment, there doesn't seem to be a plan beyond 6 months, let alone 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were to go and sit down with the board of Manchester City, I'm sure they can produce you a piece of paper that's got a long list of where they expect to be, short term, mid term, and long term. And I suppose that's the same as any successful club or business. And that doesn't seem to be in place. Like you say, he's never come out and said, this is what we want to achieve. And I guess you're just left guessing and wondering exactly where it is we're going. And the fact that he hasn't said anything, and we do seem to be doing strange things like bringing managers in for 6 months and signing players from a boardroom level.
It's not until I'm having this conversation, I think it's just coming to my mind. It's like, when's the parachute payment ending at the end of this season, is it?
Yes, I think it is, yeah.
So the parachute payments end of the season. He's cut the cloth so much, with regard to players' wages and so on. And he's given the new manager 6 months. Is there a link to that? I hope it is.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I'm not sure what they do, like, long term. Like, I think I was looking the other day there was talk of Rabbi Matondo being available on loan. And I looked into, I think he's earning 15 grand a week at Schalke, and I was looking into what Cardiff City players earn, and I think when I looked at Josh Murphy, stated online as being on about 25 grand a week in the Championship. And I mean, if that's kind of a barometer for the sort of money they're paying in wages, I can kind of now understand why they're looking in League One and League Two to fill gaps. If that is the case, and the wage bill is as high as I think we all kind of suspect it is without actually knowing, and they're losing money like they are, I mean, I don't see any way other than getting rid of them, which we've now wasted half of January messing about with bringing in managers, deciding who's staying, who's going. So I don't see anybody leaving now in January. So we're looking to the summer before we can offload anything. And even then, you're then in the situation where you're trying to offload somebody to cut the wage bill. And then depending how quickly you manage to do that dictates how much time you have to strengthen the squad or bring in somebody new. So I think it's just long term, even now going forward, if we do bring a new manager in the summer, it's going to be a shambles for quite a bit longer, I think, unfortunately.
Okay, welcome to the life of Cardiff City, people. Right, Dan, we'll leave it there if that's okay. Got on 48 minutes. My coffee's gone cold, and I'm sure you have much more, many more things to do this evening. Where can people catch you on social media, Dan?
I'm on Twitter at DJB Football, which is pretty much where I post all my work, from Forza Italian Football, German football, or even general thoughts or rants about Cardiff City on a daily basis.
No worries at all. Many thanks for joining me, Dan, and you take care and keep safe during this pandemic.
And you, no worries. Thanks for having me.
Many thanks. Take care.